Hey everybody, welcome to episode 8 of the AskEngine show. We're excited to jump in. New week, new time. Very excited to get this episode in. This is going to be the only episode you're in this week. Going to New York.
Yeah.
So you'll have to bear with us as Blake and Jim and I crank out the rest of the episodes. But we're excited to be back in, and we're going to go ahead and roll into the first question.
Yeah, this first one is not directly econ related, but it's a good one. So this is a user on Reddit asking about their resume. Their resume is constantly getting rejected, and they're never considered for positions. So they know that if they can get an interview, they do great. But local companies and bigger corporations are still turning them down. How can we help them get a break?
That's a good question. I mean, I hire a lot differently than most people. So my first question is not even I don't even look at the resume of these people a lot of times. It's who introduced them to me, or how we got introduced. I mean, that's kind of the main thing. And then I'm not asking about grade point. I'm not asking about test scores, not even for recent graduates. I'm asking one question and trying to figure out the answer to that. And it's, what have you built? And, I mean, Blake, co-founder here, I mean, if we ask you your history, I mean, it's just this constant tinkerer in your bedroom growing up, building things on your computer. And same with me. I mean, I've been doing this since I was 5 or 6 years old, it seems like. That's a long time. And then I asked you, what have you built? You're not an entrepreneur by nature, but so what have you built? And you said, I built this $4 million business for this guy. And I'm like, this is interesting. And so our team, even the ones that haven't been entrepreneurs in the past, and I say you're not an entrepreneur, you're running your own little nice, very nice agency that we talked you out of pursuing this dream. And so, on a programmer, engineer, technical talent especially, I ask that because it's kind of hard to judge whether a person is technically competent. But I can judge if they've got the same motivations to build something great together. That may or may not be. What's your experience? Do y'all have any?
Yeah, so I mean, I've never held a job for longer than 14 months, but I've never applied to a job and not got it. So I think the biggest thing for me is you have to be relentless in acquiring the interview.
Right. That's the start.
Yeah.
If you say you're good and when you're confident that when you get in there you're going to win, well then we've got a solvable problem. If you present poorly, whatever. So, all right, you find this company, what are you going to do? You're going to LinkedIn first? So
I'm going to LinkedIn, I'm going to find, I think it's very similar to the question we answered a while back on what to do when you're trying to reach someone who's hard to reach.
That's it. Yeah, go back to that last episode.
Yeah, exactly, and I'll link that in the bottom, but it's standing out. One of my favorite things that I've ever seen from a hiring standpoint is when you look at really creative people, creative agencies, things of that nature, people will put together they'll go into the recording studio and they'll record a track on why you should hire them. They'll create a video on why you should hire them. That type of stuff stands out because you're so confident in your work, you're willing to showcase your work, typically for free at that point, to get a job. So if you're doing something that you can showcase what you do before you do it, showcase it. Put together a portfolio, do something for free, research, find a way to, if your resume isn't super strong, you didn't go to Stanford, find a way to show that you can do what you're trying to find a job to do. Yeah,
and then a warm introduction. I mean, that's the key. If you're trying to raise venture capital, for instance, you're not even at the meeting without a warm introduction. And who you're introduced by and how holds equal weight to that. If it's in passing, hey, I see we're third-degree connections on LinkedIn, and you know my buddy so-and-so. Well, how do you know him? Well, I heard about him. I mean, then we're not going to go for it. But if it's a heartfelt introduction from someone I know and trust, regardless of what you're working on, even if what you're working on is terrible, your resume is terrible, your business plan is terrible, whatever, if it's a quality introduction that says you need to meet this guy, I'll take that meeting all day. So it's kind of an interesting...
Yeah, and I think if you're going the corporate route, that's a completely different story than what we've been talking about here.
Maybe so, yeah.
So, and I think there it's about having a kind of complete resume that tells a story of what you're trying to do with your career, and then seeking after that coffee break with somebody that's 2 positions below the person that's going to hire you.
Oh, gosh.
And really kind of seeking out that conversation and building that relationship there at a corporate level.
But let's be honest, if that's what you want to do, you're not listening to this
podcast.
You're not you're either interested in entrepreneurship or e-commerce. So how do you get that dream startup gig?
What's the closest to a corporate job for you? Google?
I work for ConocoPhillips.
Okay, ConocoPhillips. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
I've never had a job a day in my life. I've been an entrepreneur. I've never made $1 from a salary. 43 years old, never worked for anybody. It's probably why I'm such a bad boss.
Very good, very good. So hope that helps. And if you're looking for a corporate job, don't.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Our next question is from the ecom chat on Twitter. And this person was asking, hey folks, how do you deal with a multi-hour chunk of downtime for deployments on your transactional ecom sites? Do you suck it up? Do you insist on overnight or off-peak?
Multi-hour?
Yeah, multi-hour. And I haven't heard of a
post from 10 years ago?
Right?
Yeah.
Since 06 or earlier, I don't think I've heard of a consistent multi-hour downtime. So I would say number one, really look at your ecom platform that you're on.
Sure.
Consider your technology stack, because if you're in 2018 and you're having multi-hours of downtime, you really need to make replatforming a high priority.
Well, I'm a little upset you had to look at your watch to figure out what year it was. But other than that, no, you're dead on. I mean, I remember, the team behind Engine, we built large-scale software for our own business. We had 20 businesses on this running at one point close to $100 million of revenue through them. And the longest downtime I ever remember was less than an hour, and that was a fluke kind of occurrence.
We had an hour downtime when we were moving our database structure, and that's understandable. But if you're doing an incremental delta update on your platform, that should take minutes, not hours.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like you guys had it down to a 2 or 3 minute cycle, and this was a fairly complex across multiple entities.
Yep.
I mean, this was the most complex. Your deploy is not as complex as what they were doing.
Sure.
And it was 2 or 3 minutes, and we do it in the middle of the day. It didn't even bother us. It was that we'd rather do it at noon, where we had 5 hours to fix anything we screwed up, and it just didn't. Yeah, look at your e-commerce platform. That's the total answer.
That's the takeaway.
And we're building one of those, right?
Yeah,
it's called Engine.
We're building a kind of continuous deployment e-com platform, so expect little to no downtime.
There you go.
Our last question here is a really good one. So this is a user on Reddit asking for budget and marketing tips on a brand new e-com store. So they're opening an online clothing store with a budget of $10,000. So before they dive in, they want to hear about advice that you guys would have on what platform should I target, should I go after SEO, that kind of thing.
Well, let me talk in generality and let you do some of the specifics here, and then I'll come back with maybe some guidance at the end. So in generalities, startups need one channel. If you're General Motors or Ford or Amazon, you need multiple channels. A startup needs one. So you've kind of got three that stand out to me as really the ones that probably 95+% of companies fall into. So you've got social, and that includes Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And then there's paid and organic social as a breakdown in that. So that's one avenue. Then you got search engine optimization. So you've got free organic traffic from Google, Yahoo. It's Google today, so let's not even kid around. And then the third is
you forgot Bing.
Yeah, you still get a little. What's funny is Bing traffic has always converted better and still does.
Really?
Yeah, but there's none of it, right? I mean, I wish all traffic would go to Bing because they're like conditioned to give you money. And then the third is pay-per-click, keyword pay-per-click over on Google, so search engine marketing. And the way you look at that is kind of 2 or 3 folds. You're starting a new business, so SEO's out. It's going to take you a year in order to get up to speed, but you absolutely ought to lay the groundwork for that the day you launch. You start getting inbound links, et cetera. It takes, I said in the last 3 or 4 podcasts ago, I mean, it's like 95 days before you could even potentially rank. Usually about a year is when you start to see some. A 2 or 3 year old domain name is going to work a lot better. One that has this huge link history built up. So SEO is probably out in the beginnings. You can't survive a year or 2 as a startup, so it's probably out as a startup strategy, to be honest. Unless you come from that background and know what you're doing, which you probably don't. Then organic social. Well, it's kind of a beast that feeds itself. You've got to start somewhere, so you're going to start talking to your mom and your dad and your friends, and that's a start. Use it. Build up your organic. But it really comes down to then you've got $10,000, which is more than most people have for a budget. The way I'd look at it is a test and learn budget. I wouldn't say I'm going to go spend $10,000 on this channel. I would say I'm going to go spend $100 on this, and then I'm going to learn from that and spend another $100 on this, and another 100, and another 100. And the reason is this: if you don't have a positive return on investment on the first 500, your next 9,500 is not going to have a return on investment either. So why spend it?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to accidentally build a brand here. You need to be focused on how to actually convert a customer, or at least begin to tell that branding story, if that is your plan, which I'll let you talk a little bit about. But there's an easy way to determine this. And so you look at your cost per click on one of these channels, either search engine marketing over on Google or paid social there on Facebook, Instagram. And so look at what are you going to bid on a cost per click for this very particular keyword or this very particular audience or this very particular ad. But in general, look at what you plan on spending on that cost per click and back into what you can actually afford to. And that's, I'm amazed at how many people don't even think about this. So you're paying 50 cents a click. What do you make on a per visitor basis? If it's less than 50 cents, stop. And if you only make 50 cents, well, that's just a rat race. You're not making any money there either. So if you spend 50 cents a click, you need to be making 3 or 4 or 5x that. And if you hadn't found it, go back to the well and retest and learn. So a way to calculate on that, the simplest way on it for an e-commerce company is take your average order value. And boy, I hope you're able to put some magical graphics up here, because this is the equation that I write on every whiteboard. And I don't have one behind me, so I can't write it here. So average order value is the first. Out of that, minus your cost of goods. So average order value minus your cost of goods. That's simply what you pay for the goods. Minus fulfillment costs. So what is shipping? What is your overhead? What is your carry cost of that inventory? What is the box that you pack it in? What is your customer service answering the phone cost? So that's kind of the left side of the equation. That's what I call contribution margin. So that's average order value minus your cost of goods minus your fulfillment cost. Take those 3 numbers, get contribution margin, multiply that by 2 different things. So conversion rate. So what percentage of people buy when they're on your website? Is it 1%? Is it 10%? Is it 0.5%? And then multiply that by the number of lifetime purchases this person makes. So that'll spit out a number. And if it spits out 50 cents, maybe you bid 12 cents per click. You're not going to get much. If it spits out $5, great, you're in business. Now you can bid $1 or $1.50 or maybe even $2 on some specific things. So that's how you look at it. So I would take that $10,000, break it down into test and learn, $100, $500 maximum type increments. And if you're not making money, stop doing it. What'd you add to that? Because you're a branding guy.
Throw all that out of the window.
Oh, come on. I'm a math guy.
So yes, there's definitely.
Mine will keep you from going bankrupt. His may or may not.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm an all chips in the pile. No, so 3 things you can do. The first thing is you need to work backwards with the end in mind. And what I mean by that is you need to set up almost all of your retargeting stacks that you're going to be using and put money behind those. Simply because if you're spending money to send traffic to a website and you're not retargeting, you're going to lose anywhere from 60 to 90% of those people. They're never going to make a purchase the first time they hit your page. So set up your retargeting, set up those stacks across Facebook, across Google, and across email.
And then do the test and learn.
Exactly. So set that up first, and you'll be amazed. That's where, especially in the beginning, that's where 20% of your budget will lie, but it'll account for anywhere from 40 to 60 to 80% of the revenue that's generated is following up and telling that story. So that's number 1. Number 2, I think you do exactly what John said. I mean, it would be naive of anybody here watching this to go against someone who has the history that you do. So you do that, and I'm just going to pump some air in your head really quick.
Oh, it's huge. It barely fits.
Third is look for channels that you don't actually have to spend money on. When you're small, you have to play small. And what I mean by that is you going out and convincing and starting with product exchange, then moving into percentage of equity of the company. Any way that you can incentivize people to rock your brand, especially tastemakers that you need to be rocking your brand, you need to go and find a way to incentivize them. It may just be you doing extra work for them. If you're a graphic designer, leverage your strengths, whatever that is, and do that for them. East Coast Lifestyle is a brand that did this very well. He went and he got a $600 loan from his dad. He went and bought like 20 hoodies, flipped them, bought 50 more, flipped them, got a small budget, and then just built an army of influencers by giving them free product or giving them some way for them to feel bought into the company. So that's the 3 things that I would do. Number 1, you need to set up your retargeting. Number 2, you need to test and learn across channels. Find a channel that's working well and then maximize that one, and then move to the second one as you have more capability, more time, things of that nature. And then third, you need to figure out ways to incentivize people to rep your product, become an ambassador for your brand that are not direct monetary exchanges.
That's great. What's interesting about it is I think we both agree that we're both right in this. And it reminds me, I'm a doctor by training, a family practice doctor. So you come to a medicine doctor like me, and I use the tool at my disposal. It's what I know. So I may give you a pill. Whereas John Max, maybe he's a surgeon. And what surgeons do when you go to a surgeon is they cut the problem out. And so it's interesting to hear two completely different answers saying almost exactly the same thing. I absolutely love your way of cheating, just because the question was framed as I have $10,000 to spend. You answered it better in that you said you don't have to spend this money. How do you cheat? Keep $9,999 of it in your pocket, and when you get bigger, maybe then swing back and try our ways. So two different tool sets and hopefully same or similar outcomes.
Well, and it boils down to my thesis on if you can't sell something without putting paid media behind it, you're most likely going to really struggle to sell it regardless. And I'm not talking about startups. I'm not talking about a established idea. If you can't convince your buddies to buy your product, and if you're not a good enough salesman to tell that story to people you know, like, and trust. I mean, when you're raising money, the 3 F's, isn't it? Friends, family, and fools. That you raise money from. So I mean, when you're starting a business, everybody wants to go big and go fast, which is fantastic. You know, if you want to go build $1 million company tomorrow, do it. But I think what people sometimes forget is hard work and patience come into that. And if you're not willing to sit on Instagram, sit on Twitter, and just grind and ask for the sale, no amount of money is going to remedy the success or the success you don't have.
Well, I've built several businesses that got up to a pretty long, 8 figures of revenue that never made a profit. And it's because it was that hamster wheel of spend money, and never perfect the product. So I completely agree with you. There's 2 routes you can go. And this is interesting. I spent the first probably 15 or 16 years of my entrepreneurial life bootstrapping things, and built a lot of fairly successful small-ish companies. And by small, it had anywhere from $200,000 of revenue.
Quantify small.
One of them had close to $20 million of revenue. Bootstrap. And I tell you what, you build $1 million business that's cash flowing, and you own 100% of it, you're a king. Yeah. On the other hand, if you take $5 million of venture capital and build a $1 million business that cash flows, you're an idiot. And so you have to kind of, you can get caught up in this hype that you read on TechCrunch or VentureBeat or some of these other places and think there's only one way to do it, and that's raise a bunch of money and spend a bunch of money and scale and get big fast. And that's it's great if you know you're going down that road. $10,000 is not enough to get big fast. So with that, I probably lean towards your direction of how can you cheat? How can you get traction? How can you validate your product? How can you do it profitably? And then if you happen to back into a way that prints money, if, for instance, this organic traffic, let's say it's making $10 per visitor, if you run it through this exact same equation, because you ought to know your per visit value anyway, and that's how you calculate it. Well, if you look at it, that's spitting out $5, $10, $15. Man, now I'm calling a guy that looks like me, some algorithmic marketer, and I guarantee you, if you have a business making $10 of contribution margin per visitor, I'll find you an audience, and we'll spend some money, and we'll get you big fast. But unless you have that, I think your way's better. Yeah. Sadly.
Awesome. So I'm gonna ask like an impromptu question, because I think that while we're here with the equation, I want to talk about planning, because I think that's something that you kind of just hit on. Is if you have low AOV, if you have low contribution margin, I think it's very interesting to kind of talk about, and this may be a whole nother segment. So if it's a whole nother segment, we'll stop and we'll do it tomorrow. But when you're talking about low margin businesses, or when you're talking about, I think planning with the end goal in mind is massive. And what I mean by that is that if you want a lifestyle business, $1 million business, and you want to own 100% of it, you're going to have much different behavior than if you're trying to, like what we're doing at Engine. We have much different behavior. Right. And so when you're thinking about that, how do you use this equation to plan for initial user cost acquisition and then move from there into, great, now we've acquired a customer, we've used this, now what can we do to increase it on the back end on a 3, 6, 9 month
So let's
process?
stand on the shoulders of giants here. I have not been successful at doing this, but I know several people that have. And probably the best example of this is Mark Lora, the Jet.com founder. And I'm actually going to rewind back to 05, 06 when he started Diapers.com, which was Quidsi. So what he did was found diapers, right? And diapers are bulky, expensive to ship, and super freaking cheap already at Walmart or Sam's Club or Costco or wherever. So he said, no worries, I'm going to sell diapers and I'm going to do it as cheap as anybody. And yeah, we're going to squeeze all the cost out of this. And we're going to build an incredible logistics system. They had the same robots, the Kiva robots that we had. So I think there were 20 installs of this. He had one of the earlier ones and I was one of the later ones. But diapers were a loss leader for him. There's a great podcast he was on the other day, and I was just enthralled listening to this, even though it was 10 years old story. Yeah, we're going to sell diapers. We're going to sell them cheaper than everybody, and it's going to be a loss leader. And when I've got your email address and I've got you into subscription for diapers, I'm going to sell you a stroller. I'm going to sell you books for your kids. I'm going to sell you formula, whatever it is, and those are higher margin. It's no different than the casino giving away the jumbo shrimp or the lobster tail or the steak, where you'll come in and gamble in their casino. So, I mean, he did it. I mean, don't study what I did. I was never able to do what you just described, but we tried it multiple times. But MultiHour, Quidsi, diapers, that's what you do. That's brilliant. It's really good.
Perfect. Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. Done. Boop.
Yeah,
good
and
one.
if you'd asked that question a week ago, I'd have stared blankly. But this is a great. Y'all got to get on this podcast. It is.
We got
what is it?
you on this podcast?
No. You need to. Well, I could, but you need to listen to it. It's success! Exclamation point. Success. How I did it.
Why do you do this for exclamation point?
What do you do?
What
do you do?
Not that
do you
one.
do boink? Do you jump up in the air and put your fist below your feet?
Not the universal symbol for like F you. Not that one.
This
That's
one?
for sure.
Did you stop this?
Yeah.
Okay, thank God.
I've got some symbols for you.
Did you get worried for a second that one wasn't stopped?
Yeah.